Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares Broadcasting, 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time. Tape delayed throughout the country and the rest of the world. John is engineering the broadcast at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. Class, special treat today. For those of you new to our broadcast classroom, you'll hear my dear and close friend, a member of my family, your senior instructor. His name is Mike Ma. If you saw him in person, he would remind you of a kind grandfather, polite, generous, helpful, a teacher. He's a U.S. combat Marine. Only 10% of Marines saw combat, a Vietnam-era Marine. He's been surrounded by the police in numerous countries and in the United States. The police didn't know what to do with him. He frightens them. And if you cross him, he'll be the scariest person in the room. Today you'll learn about the three-man militia. I've trained with him, and I've trained against him. If you train against him, the best you can hope for is that you'll leave bleeding. He shot me, and I've shot him. What you will hear has never been discussed on the radio. Many believe that society will collapse due to grid down, supply chain failures, civil unrest, war, government, corporation false flag, an asteroid hit, global warming, or by a man-made mistake. This is what you need to know. Welcome, Mike Ma.
Well, thank you, Vincent, for having me. Yes. Well, you said Mike, a mouthful there.
Well, okay, let me challenge you. Have I said anything that's untrue?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Mike, I was discussing with Mrs. Finelli our age, and you and I are pretty close to the same age, right?
Yeah, I'm older. I think maybe like 5 years or maybe even more than that.
Okay. Well, I'm 66.
Oh, okay. I'm 69, so I'm a whole lot more. But I've got the advantages over you.
I got to tell you, Mike, you are a very, very dear friend, and I consider you family. And class, you're going to learn today what we're really like. And in these very dangerous situations that we think we are approaching, you need to be prepared. And we're going to teach you things that you've never heard before. Mike, three-man militia. What is a three-man militia?
It's a relationship. That's basically what it is now, and it's surrounded by normally your hobbies. Like if you're in communications, you know, you're a ham operator, the radio operator, then and somebody wants to learn about it, then you would talk and get together and learn. And then it ends up being more than that, because once you get this relationship, well, then you'll say, hey, you know how to grow a garden? And then the other one will say, oh, no. So, well, let's find somebody and let's learn how to grow a garden. And then you just continue. It's a continue growing type of a relationship. And what it is, you get that hunger of learning, and it goes on to other people because you want to know what they know. And then once you get this relationship going, well, then they want to know what you know. And it just starts snowballing. And then now you may not, become a professional at it, but you will learn stuff that, you never thought you could possibly learn. And you'll learn how to work with others. And then that opens you up to all kinds of what it is. It's talking. We can talk, just like what you were saying about all these different things, these bad things that could happen. And then in communications, what could we do? And then you start learning how to do it. And then it just goes on from that to another skill. And like I say, but it's the relationships that you gain on the way, just like you and I. We had the desire to learn, and we just got together, and it just kind of snowballed into more and more, and then we found out what the other one knows and you don't know, and you want to learn, and it just keeps going, just like that, nonstop, no ending.
Mike, I mentioned to our meetup group, over the years, I saw the same people many, 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 many times in Springfield, Missouri, where we'd host these 3, 4, 5, 6 hour meetups, once a week. And I said, I can envision a situation where I'm surrounded 360 degrees, and there's just two of us, me and one other person. And what we do is we go back to back. So I take 180 degrees of the circle. The person at my back takes 180 degrees of the circle. And there's going to be a shootout. It's going to be terrible. I'm convinced that if one of you has my back, and I'm not talking about you, Mike Ma, I'm talking about other people. I'm convinced that if you've got my back and there's a shootout ready to happen right now, you're going to raise your hand, surrender, and I'm going to get shot in the back.
Yeah, I was just thinking about how we can destroy everything around us. That's exactly what I was
Well, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about, the keyboard survivalist, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if you and I were in that situation, it'd be a little different, right?
Oh, yeah.
But what I'm saying is most people who think they're prepared are not prepared for anything like that. Mm-hmm. And, I was in the shower today, just before the broadcast, and I was looking down at my wrist, Mike. I still have a scar on my wrist where you shot me.
You still have holes in your house?
Just in the kitchen.
Did you get those patched?
No, I'm not going to. No. As a matter of fact, the next time we paint, I'm probably going to put a frame around those scars in the kitchen. I'm serious. Well, I mean, really, I think they're worth, people will come here and they'll go, I see you've got a frame on your kitchen wall in a strange place. Why is that? Mike Ma was here. But seriously, Mike, we've shot each other. We've been bleeding. I mean, it was absolutely terrifying. I remember you being at the farmhouse training some others, and I was inside the farmhouse and I heard screaming, absolute screaming, and there were just a couple of you outside, and it wasn't you screaming; it was the others. Mm-hmm. You remember that?
Yeah, there was 3 or 4 of them. I think it was something like that. They came to bug me.
Oh, jeez. Well, class, no kidding.
When reality sets in, it's amusing when you know there's going to be an afterwards. And that's what happened to them. Well, this is reality, and it's nothing like they thought it was going to be.
Class, let me just tell you how it works with Mike Ma. And if you're going to train with him, here's what might happen. You might get shot, and then you'll learn about, well, it'll be something like this. You start your training, Mike will say, here's what we're going to do, and then you get shot, and then Mike will tell you why you got shot. Right? Isn't that how it goes?
Yeah, that's right. But people say, well, you're supposed to show me. And I said, we can't show you anything until you know what's going to happen. And then once you know what's going to happen, well, you're not the same person.
Absolutely correct. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Mike, 3-man militia. Now, what you're saying is you start out small, and you get to know each other. And these might be your foxhole buddies, right?
Yes. That's exactly right. And it depends on the circumstances. That's why it doesn't have to be, and I get upset when people think of militia, they think of these people playing army or something. And it's, what it takes is coming together. That's really what it is. And it's coming together to take on whatever kind of goal it is. And the shooting part and playing army part is very little. Most of it is, like I say, food, water, shelter, taking care of others. And every once in a while, you got the soldier part. And even that, I have it set up where I don't want to lose anybody. I don't want anybody to get injured because, like I say, we're not going to have everything that we need. A true military has got a support system. That's why these militias, they don't. They just think they're going to intimidate their way. And it doesn't work that way. And there's a life you have to live when you're not fighting. And so that means you got to learn gardening and working with others and stuff like that. And that's where the relationship comes in. Not only your immediate relationship, but the people living next door to you. And it all ties together with the 3-man militia.
And then there's an aftermath, right? So
yes.
When an event happens, then when the event is over, now what?
Yeah.
And you have to think about that as well. Mike Ma, 3-man militia, and we're going to be talking in depth about it. Communications, first aid, gardening, mechanics, scouting, sniping, computer technologies, the spiritual aspect, the meet and greet, hunting, fishing, water, food. And think about who's going to be at your house. Mike Ma's with us. NoStressMike.com. NoStressMike.com. The definition of a militia is an army made up of regular citizens called to respond during an emergency. In this definition, today, we're talking about 3 guys or some guys and gals who are training together to survive. We're not talking about marching down Main Street. We're not talking about playing army, like a reenactment type situation. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a few guys and gals getting together to learn all kinds of things necessary for their own survival and to teach others what they've learned. Is that right, Mike?
That's correct. Absolutely.
Okay. What is the typical age of the people whom you train? How old are they?
It goes from maybe 16 to 70-some. Yeah.
Okay.
But
what is the age?
It covers everything. It covers everything. Gardening.
Are most of them over 45?
No, 16 years old. It's a father and son.
Are most
father
of them?
And son or daughter.
Okay.
That learning how to work together, and they know how to work together because they're a family. Now I come in. Mm-hmm. I'm not one of them. Mm-hmm. Well, they have to learn how do you deal with these people. And that's where values come in. And because, like I say, you teach your children values, well, if you don't test them, what good is it? And then you have somebody like me come in, and then, they're going, boy, Dad, how come he does this? How come he does that? And then he's learning how to deal with an outsider to your group. So that's what I'm saying. Even younger than that, but it changes a whole lot. Like I say, it would be more for leather work. I do leather work, and so we might be doing that, father and daughter or something like that, and then I'll join in with them. And this is the way they learn, kind of like puppy dogs. If you take them away from their mother and their siblings too early, they don't know how to deal with other dogs. So they get an attitude or something like that. But if they've been brought up with the whole family, they know when you like that, they know they hurt you, and then they pull back. That's the same thing with this. They're bringing an outsider in, and they're learning how to deal with this outsider. And when you don't, because sometimes, we're not the same way they believe, and they'll say, well, you deal with it, but we don't do it the way he does it. And then a lot of that's because they're too young.
And Mike,
still. Mm-hmm. Yes.
My understanding is that whenever you come across a new group, you are always the outsider because they've never met you before. Not that you're a bad guy. It's just that you're new to that group. And
yes.
People do need to learn how to work with others. And that's what I was talking about with the aftermath. If a situation happens and there's a huge skirmish and you attack your neighbors, and we happen to be the neighbors, mm-hmm. there's going to be an aftermath.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And let me ask you this, Mike. So, who is in charge? Like, if we're at Joe's house, for example, who's in charge? The most knowledgeable person, or who? Who's in charge?
The three-man militia, when there's only three of you, and depending on what chore you're doing, one of you or two of you are going to look around and say, well, you know a little bit about it, you're in charge. And then they just change like that. That's what the three-man militia does. Now, in the way of households, where we're set up, we've got a small community. It's a lot of farming and a lot of people going into town to work. But the way we have it set up is each house is like a battleship. And whoever's in charge of that house is in charge of everyone on the battleship. In other words, the captain on the ship is overseeing everybody. And that's exactly what it is in the house. One person oversees everyone.
Okay, I've got a couple questions about that when we come back. So when my outlaws, whom I love dearly, come to my house, I'm in charge. It's not really a democracy. It's a dictatorship. We'll be right back. NoStressMike.com. Mike Moss with us, Combat Marine. Mike, I've talked about my relatives, my outlaws, as I affectionately refer to them. And I've said, all right, you guys can come to our house if it gets bad, but you got to bring everything you need. If you need blankets, you need to bring them. If you need food, you need to bring it. We'll have some water here. But everything else you need, you got to bring. And it won't be a democracy. It won't be a free-for-all. It will be a dictatorship. I'm in charge. How do you feel about that?
It's all laid out on the table, simple to understand, and we know whose fault it is if it doesn't work. Yours. So, and you are taking that responsibility, just like you should. Now, are they taking their responsibility? Now, they may not have all the stuff that they need, but in advance, if you're thinking you're going to have a retreat over here, this is where you're going to go, you should do some preparation. You may not have all the stuff you need there, but like I say, you have food. There's nothing wrong with getting some freeze-dried food. Get that over there. Maybe have some weapons, especially you're out in the country. If you have, a half a dozen weapons, you can really only use, a couple, 2 or 3 if you're in town. So why not keep 2 or 3 over at your house, along with some ammunition? These are things, if you accept this stuff from these people, you are giving them the okay to come. So, but they need to, I tell people, like we're like you, we're out in the country. And I tell them, you need to come out once a month or so, help us work cattle and stuff like that. When you come out, bring a little something out with you. And then you're learning how the process works in our household. And this isn't my house, so I'm not even the boss man. So I got to listen to him. But anyway, they're going to be bringing this stuff out, and they're going to be learning how we get along. Remember, we were talking about the puppies. Okay, that's what we're doing. We're learning how to get along. Even though we may not agree on stuff, it's different. We have different options. He's the boss. His option goes first. Or if it's something that he knows that's not his thing, he'll appoint that to somebody else to get this worked out. In other words, like he's not really a good gardener. So what he'll do is find, and I'm not either. So we'll find somebody that knows gardening, and they'll come out and not do the garden. They will instruct us on how we do the garden. And that's the kind of stuff that if you're using this as a retreat, you're coming in, you're becoming part of the system that they have. And then that's going to save you a lot of time later on, because we're going to have to explain all this stuff to you later on. But if you already know what it is, you're stepping in, you're an asset right when you get here instead of being a problem. So that's why you need to think ahead and prepare ahead. You might not have everything, but get some stuff over there and bring more and more. And then, like I say, that's opening a door for you. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. Well, absolutely, Mike. For like a year and a half, maybe 2 years, I had this 1-ounce gold coin in the studio in front of me every day that you left with me. You said, here, hold on to this. I'll be back.
Yeah. That's another really good example. And that's a seed. And like I say, I'm planting these seeds even in different countries, the places that I go. I plant these seeds everywhere. And I may not have all the other stuff, but I'm doing something. And that's what you need to think on.
Yeah, Mike, that I'm pretty sure is a foreign concept to those who just heard that. Class, literally, no exaggeration. Mike had this gold coin, and he said, he was leaving. He was leaving the farmhouse. He had been here for a while. He's leaving the farmhouse. He said, hold on to this. I'll be back. Now, he trusted me with this very valuable gold coin. Absolutely trusted me. He knew that when he came back, it would be there.
Yeah.
Is that right, Mike? That's
absolutely right. And that's a way of testing. Not only you're testing me, I'm testing you. And this is what you do. You can't just blindly follow, and you can't expect people to blindly follow you. And that's why leadership means you have to give an example. And they have to have faith in you. They don't want you wishy-washy, say one thing and do something else. And it doesn't matter what you are, but they want to know what it is. They want to see it. And, like I say, they don't want you to say one thing and do something else. And this is this leadership. And like I say, that's how you gain trust. And it's easier to do it, like I say, as a 3-man militia. Because there's only, like I say, you and one, like for what we are, is me and one other person. And then whatever we're getting into, we grab somebody else, and that'll be our third for this other, because we only know so much. So we look for outsiders to help us. And that's the same thing after a bad situation, and you have all these people coming to your house. They better be bringing some, we were talking about substance items, but like I say, if you're not bringing any skills and knowledge, you better bring a whole lot of stuff because, but like I say, you've got to make yourself an asset, and it has to show pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. So, Mike, for well over a year, I looked at this coin every day. I put it where I would see it, where I wouldn't forget it. And when you came back, the first thing you got was a great big hug. The second thing, probably from Mrs. Finelli, you got a hug. Third thing was, Mike, you left this here. And it wasn't the kind of thing where you had to say, hey, Vin, about that coin. Right?
Yeah, you didn't, that's right.
And the point is exactly what you said, trust. Now, it wasn't like you left me with $5. You left me with a very valuable coin. Mm-hmm. And, Mike, that takes a lot of trust on your part to do that, because I could have said to my wife, we're rich. We're rich. Let's Disney, here we come, right?
Yeah.
That could have happened.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What was your thought that you would get your coin back? What in your mind? What was your thought?
Oh, no problem. It's if I can't leave a gold coin, I can't leave my life.
That's a very, very good point. Okay. So the purpose of the three-man militia really in our world, yours, mine, and our class, is to get to know each other, to start doing things together, to get to know those who are close to you, get to know your neighbor, because you can both handle a hoe, you can garden, and you get to know each other, and in between those garden strokes with the hoe, you chat, you talk about other things, you spend time together. You learn, you bond, and then you move on to first aid, right? Then you move on to other things, and it's then you learn how to shoot on the range, right? Or you build a range, or you say, you know what?
Well, you got to remember, not everybody's equal, and you're learning what their limits are, mm-hmm. and so you get up close to their limits. Hopefully, they will choose to expand their limits, but you don't make people do something that they don't really want to do. But if you got the relationship, more than likely it's going to be fun because I'm not going to make fun of you and stuff like that if I do bad. But we're all just going to have a good laugh and we'll start to tell stories about it, So that's your relationship. And so, but people can only do so much. I mean, I've got my weaknesses also. So once you understand my limits, and sometimes they're defined limits, you can only do so much. Okay, like I only speak English, and I travel all over. I've lived in Central America. I don't speak Spanish, and, my mind just doesn't do that stuff. So, and then it's for you to get mad at me because I'm not learning in the language, it's not going to do any good for the relationship. Because I do have my limits. And so that's what the relationship is all about. Look for those limits, and now I will make up for your weaknesses if you have a good relationship. It's no big deal.
Mike, when you are in a stressful situation, you are outnumbered, outgunned by the other team. Let me just say it this way. When that kind of thing happens to me, and I'm surrounded by authorities, the character that I revert to is Columbo, Lieutenant Frank Columbo. I'm confused. I want to help. I look around. I make gestures. I appear innocuous. Is that similar to what you do?
It is. My first thing is I don't understand. So
that's what I mean.
I put a big old smile on my face, and I start shaking hands. And the next thing is how they react to that will kind of determine what's going to go on. I mean, my mind is thinking something else, but my physical body is, like I say, I'm smiling. Hey, I'm no threat. And then, like I say, I'll have that problem when I'm traveling, and I'll have checkpoints or bandits will stop me and stuff like that. And I'm not smart enough to figure out I'm getting robbed. Well, for one thing, I don't do well when I'm getting robbed. I don't give money, so that, I hope you got another reason for stopping me, because you're not going to financially benefit from it. And like I say, now I'm older, so now I can't chase you down anymore. So then as I'm shaking hands, you're getting closer to me. So if there is a problem, I don't have to run you down so much. And more than likely, if they're going to shake hands with me, we can communicate some way or another. And nobody needs to get hurt.
I know exactly what you're talking about, Mike Ma. Class, we'll be right back. So, Mike, when you are outnumbered by the other team, whether it be the police, whether it be bandits, whatever it is, and it looks like it's a dangerous situation, you put a big smile on your face, you reach out, you start shaking their hands, you do the absolute unexpected thing, which is bring them closer to you, because then they are within striking distance. Is that right?
Correct. And I need to know what kind of weapons I'm up against. And, this helps me collect weapons also.
Mm-hmm. Mike, you were arrested in Cuba, is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm. I just flew in.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah. No. To a point.
You want to talk about it?
Yeah, to a point. When I flew in, I went into Cuba in the year 2000, and that was after Russia pulled out and they were having their problems. And I'm a travel companion, and I was somebody wanted to go there, and so I went with them to go there. And when we got off the plane, I don't know why, but when I got up to the front of the line of immigration, they told me to go in the back of the line. And so it was at the end, and they kept me. And they ended up, have you ever seen them on TV, the light bulb just hanging in the ceiling, and that's the only thing, the one chair, you're sitting in the chair with the light bulb above your head. That's exactly the kind of condition I was in. And I had no idea, don't speak Spanish, so I had no idea what I did wrong or what was going on. And they talked to me clear up, it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon up until 10 o'clock that evening. And they would talk and then get away and then talk and come back. And like I say, I can't talk. So finally, I realized I've got a really bad situation. And so I finally, at the end, I told them, well, if you don't want me in Cuba, I'm more than happy to leave. And they said, oh, okay, no problem. Take off your clothes. And when it's take off your clothes, that means you're going to prison. And Cuba doesn't have a prison. So that's not going to be a good thing. What they do is they'll put you in a work camp, and then you pretty much don't come out of the work camp. And as I was taking off my clothes, I had a money belt with money in that they didn't know about. And I had documents. And when I took my money belt off, I set it, after they searched everything, I'll put it where they've already searched. So I thought, hey, good, I'm good with that. But then they found my documents. And when they found that, they never seen anything like that before. So then now they found somebody that could speak English. And so then they came and they started asking, what is this? Who are you? What are you doing here? And anyway, I've got a line that I use when I get in situations like this. And on this particular one, it was I told them that I was a bodyguard for the Pope. And when that happened, they, whoa, so, and then I told them, well, not really a bodyguard. What it is, the Pope wants to come here. And they asked me to come and check it out first. And they said, well, we weren't notified you were coming. And I gave them a great big old smile again. And I said, they'll notify you, not now. So then they knew if they mess with me, they will be notified. And so that wasn't a good thing for them. And it ended up, not only they let me go, they gave me a visa where I could go anywhere in the country. So I did good on that. But I can't go back. Well, welcome. I do that all the time.
Class, if you knew Mike Ma, you would have a perfect mental image of what he just said. I want you to think about that. So you need to have your own lines prepared and rehearsed, ready for those types of emergencies. We're going to top of the hour commercials, news. We'll be right back. Everyone all set, cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. No stress, Mike is with us. Mike Ma, special treat class. Mike, I was a speaker at one of those conventions, and I was wearing my standard uniform, which is a long-sleeve white shirt. You've seen me look like this. I had a tie on, dark blue jeans, black combat boots, black tactical belt, and a blue blazer. And I walked up to this guy who was, exhibiting his wares, and he had gun accessories and so forth, and body armor. And he said, "You need this body armor." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, to protect yourself." I said, "Oh, okay. You're not wearing any." And he said, "Well, I don't need to. There are no guns allowed in here." I said, "Oh." I said, "Really? Are you sure?" He said, "Yeah, right there on the front door. It says no guns." So I gently moved, and you could see just a butt end of my 45, and I think he had second thoughts. So the topic I'd like to chat with you about is, you go to these gun shows and you see people buying our body armor, bump stocks. They're trying to buy bump stocks because they were deemed something we should not be allowed to have anymore. Special scopes, bipods, all these accessories. What are your thoughts for the three-man militia in weapons?
Simple. What happens in a combat stressful situation? You want to keep things as simple as possible, and especially when it comes to weapons, you don't want to second guess your weapon. So if I'd be happy with revolvers. The only problem I have with revolvers, they don't hold enough rounds. But like I say, the semi-autos, there's always a chance it's not going to work. And I don't get them fancied up too much because that increases the chance there's going to be a problem. But I like to spend more time on tactics, and because tactics is what wins anything. You might use some intimidation, look good and all this kind of stuff, but it's for anybody with experience, looks means little. It's what they're looking for is, what does this person know? But like I say, when I get in a situation, I look at their weapons, and I'm looking for a simple weapon to get and use. And I have to think, does this person have bullets for it? So these are things I have to think about. But I want to keep it as simple as possible. With the three-man militia, I try to keep everybody with AKs and ARs, one or the other. And because, like I say, they're the most simplest thing you can work with. Once you get accustomed with it, then we can really focus on the tactics. And the idea is don't be where the bullets are going to be going. That's why body armor is kind of secondary. It's always been through history of combat how much armor and how much weapons. A human can only carry so much. You can only move so fast, and so how much armor do you put on, and what kind of weapons do you use? There's going to be a trade-off. Well, I'll put it this way. I'm such a chancy guy, I don't wear a seat belt, okay? And I ride my bicycle. I don't have a helmet on when I ride my bicycle. So that tells you, I really throw my life on the line a lot. So like I say, so focus on the tactics. Tactics is what wins. Keep your weapons simple and few. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, there are people who have all these fancy sights. And to me, I'm not going to rely on a battery for my sight. Oh. I want to make sure that if I need a sight, I have very plain sights. I really do on my gear. For example, it's really simple. Iron sights. My AR-15 is a SP1 made by Colt. It does not have a scope. It does not have a red dot sight. All it has is the iron sights, and it has a short barrel. It's all within the the legal limits. It's unmodified from the factory, and it's lightweight. It works, and it's fast. And the same thing with my 45. Now, I know you prefer a 9mm to a 45, and I understand why. But your 9mm doesn't have any accessories on it. It's just plain Jane simple. Is that right?
No, that's all of them. Just in case one doesn't want to work, I still got the backups. So that tells you I don't even trust the simple stuff. And like I say, I've seen too many weapons. Well, it's the same thing for me. There's times that I will shoot a weapon. If you stick your weapon around the corner, I will shoot your weapon. I will shoot your hand. I will shoot your foot. You know what I mean? So that's why, another reason why you don't want just one. And like I say, when there's no threats at all, I'll carry one firearm. When there's no threats at all. If there's any kind of threat at all, then it's no telling what I'm going to have. And it's not only what I have, is what I can get to pretty quick. So you don't open yourself up for air.
Mike, let me ask you this. Don't answer if you don't want to. When you were in Vietnam, did you have to shoot anybody?
The shooting wasn't the hard part. I was in the Marines. What we did is we would have a fighting hole. Marines, that's why I was kind of laughing when you said foxhole, because we have fighting holes. It's chest high, and it's enough for 3 men to get in this hole. And that hole is everything. And 20 yards from you or somewhere like that, there's another hole with 3 more Marines. And I don't care what happens in their hole. They don't care what happens to my hole. And we will go up against between 500 and the maximum they guessed was 7,000. And that was 100 of us. And shooting, that's what is funny when you say the shooting, because shooting was secondary. You don't have enough ammunition. And when they're coming in human waves like that, there's no way you can reload. And we use tactics. Tactics is, like I say, is what gets you through this type of situation. And I'd like to say most were done hand to hand. but I was in machine guns, I was in mortars, and and as a rifleman, you have all different kinds of weapons that you use, but not everything is done with firearms. And like I say, when you're going against that many, you're not going to reload, so you have to pick up other things. And I do that even right now. Every morning, I work out with a staff, machete, tomahawk, and a sword, and at least once a day with all of them. And and it's not so much the weapon itself. What you're doing is you're keeping up the confidence and the being able to move, the flexibility. And I'm not as fast as I used to be, but it's made up for it. I'm a whole lot smarter. I know how to make things work. Right back to tactics. I'm not really concerned about the weapons I have. I'm more concerned about yours. If I need it, and when I'm talking about yours, I'm talking about my threat. Do I need your weapon, and what will your weapon do? And then I can work around it. Whatever it is, I can work around it. I'm not set on a particular weapon. I don't have to have. Well, I need like a firearm. I need a firearm that fits my hand because I don't aim. So the angle of the handle and the slide needs to be in the right spot. The hump on the back needs to be the right thing. And if it's like that, I don't need to aim. I can just pick it up. And that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at people's weapons, my threats. I'm looking at their weapons, seeing who's got the ones that I need. And then I work from there. But I know what I can do. They don't know what they can do. And they sure don't know what they can do to me.
And how much in that equation of what you're going to do relates to those around you who might melt down and cause other problems? Or maybe they're melting down. I'm talking about bystanders who are right there with you, potential hostages, if you will, in, let's say, a store. How much of that enters the equation, and what do you think about regarding them?
Okay, now you're talking about threats, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Yeah, I think I was the first person to use concealed carry to stop a crime in progress in the state of Kansas in 2007. And that's what I had to do. I had to evaluate. It was a street gang came into a convenience store I was in. They came in to rob it. And I had to evaluate who's the threat and who's not the threat and who I need to work for. And that's why I wasn't thinking about my weapon or my carry, because that's going to be taken care of already. I just need to know who to and when to shoot. And I figured it all out.
When we come back, would you share that with us? That's a great learning experience for you to tell. And then after that, what did you do immediately after the shooting? We'll be right back. Mike Ma, no stress, Mike. So, class, we're talking about tactics. And, Mike, if I understand this correctly, you were in a convenience store in Kansas. You were a customer in this convenience store. And all of a sudden, some bandits came in, and guns were being waved around, or at least one, and you had to figure out what you were going to do, whether you're going to be a victim or whether you're going to survive this. Is that right? And there were bystanders in there too?
No bystander, just the clerk and I. And
okay.
Being a victim is not an option. That's not even, I don't care what the situation is, that's not even an option. That's why I go through all the scenarios. I want to hear stories, what happens to other people, so then I know what to look for, and I can start now figuring out a tactic. So when the time comes, I'm not really all that confused. I can stay focused on what I need to do, and I won't get misled. Now, what there was two, and like I say, they were young. They were wearing a mask, but I could tell they were young. But I didn't. I do know some of the situations, I guess, these young people get themselves into, and especially gang, and that's what I figured out real quick. They're part of a gang, and gangs do certain things. And so now I figured out what they're going to do. I just don't know when. And so now what I got to do is figure out what I want to do. And that wasn't, like I say, being a victim was not an option, so I automatically started doing what I was going to do, and I drew my weapon, I'm prepared. And they were doing this, well, they were watching me when I drew my weapon. But like I say, I know they're inexperienced. They were tunnel vision, so they didn't really see what I did. And then, but I wasn't even thinking about it. It's an automatic draw my weapon, and then I'm just figuring out, okay, who are the threats? And there was only one with the threat. But the gun wasn't pointed at me, so, it's not really a threat. But then the point came, the guy looked at me, and then he turned. The other one was at the door, but I didn't see a gun on him. And so, but when he turned on me, that's when I got him, and then I jumped over him and went after the one that was at the door. In my mind, he was going to the car with the rest of them. And it's a whole lot easier getting them all when they're still sitting in the car, so that's why I went out, and I was right behind him. But he wasn't a threat, so I just let him go. But he just went on down the street. There wasn't no car. And I'm, good. So I'm standing in front of the convenience store holding a gun, and when you drive by, you look in the window, you see somebody laying on the floor. So I thought, this doesn't look good. So I holstered my weapon again, and I went in the store. And that was a big mess up. And but I did. I went into the store. And then 3 minutes later, the police came, and 3.5 minutes later, friends and family of the guy laying on the floor came. And if it was the other way around, I didn't have near enough bullets. So what I learned from that is, I always carry extra. I mentioned that. And I would go with my extra and wait for the police to come, and then I can go on from there. What got me is when the police came, I told them, boy, I wish you would have come earlier. Then I wouldn't have had to shoot the guy. If you would have seen him with the gun, then I wouldn't have to shoot him. And he says, if I would have drove by and saw this guy holding the gun, I would have went over to the parking lot next door and waited. And then I got confused. And he says, well, I have to wait because the crime isn't over. Is it going to be a robbery? Is he going to take the money and shoot the clerk? Is he going to, and that'll be a homicide. And if it's, will he take the money, shoot the clerk, and shoot you? It'll be a double homicide. So I have to wait for the crime to be over. That's when I realized this is not a good situation. You need to take care of yourself.
Right back to the three-man militia in training.
Yes.
That's what we come full circle.
The clerk was part of the three-man militia, so he knew what was going on.
All right. We'll be right back. Mike Ma. Class, if you'd like to learn more about Mike Ma, you can just type in Mike Ma, M-A-H. It's all over YouTube. And if you want to hear more broadcasts with Mike and me, you can go to your favorite search engine. You can type in Vincent Finelli, F-I-N-E-L-L-I, comma, Mike, M-I-K-E, space, M-A-H, and you'll find us. Mike, you went to China. You want to tell us about that, or would you rather not?
Yeah, no, that was an adventure. I learned a lot.
Why'd you go to China? Why'd you go to China?
That part I don't really want to talk about, but not everything works out like you expect. And when I make mistakes, and when I make a mistake, I don't dwell on it. I just move on. And so China turned out to be one of those countries that I wore out my welcome also. But anyway, it was, like I say, I was in Cuba. That was my first communist country, and after that, I decided I never wanted to go to another communist country. And then, but, I'm half Chinese, and I thought, well, China can't be all that bad, not after going to Cuba. And it was a unique experience. I was there 3 months the first time, and then went back for 6 more months. And it was very, very difficult. I don't speak the language every place I go anyway, but not speaking the language, not being able to read, because they use symbols, and they're communist. And I learned it when I was in Cuba also, they're not friendly or helpful. The big difference between the United States and, every other country there is, in the United States, God or Christian values is number one, because we have inalienable rights from God. So that's number one. And number two is we the people. And we the people are individuals. And then then comes the Constitution. And the Constitution doesn't restrict the people, it restricts the government. And the United States is the only place like that. And it's apparent in China, because not only there's not really any religion, they are Buddhists, but I haven't quite figured out what Buddhist means. And they're not friendly, they're not motivated to, nothing motivates them to be nice. There's nothing to do that, because the government gives them everything, so they don't need to be nice to you, to try to cooperate with you or anything like that. They depend on the government on everything. And so it's completely opposite of what I'm used to, and it was very unique. I did see where my father came from. I went to the village where he came from. And but anyway, I traveled all over China. And matter of fact, the first time I was there, I got in a lot of trouble all the time. But they never threw me in jail. And I got off the plane, and then one of the rules as a foreigner, whenever you come to a city, you're supposed to check into the police department and let them know why you're there, who you're there to see, how long you're going to be there, and, other questions. These are all things I'm not going to tell them. So I thought, well, why would I waste my time going in and check in if I'm not going to answer their questions? And besides that, I can't even find the police department. So when I got into China, the next thing I found out, my credit cards didn't work. The credit cards work where the tourists are. And they want Americans or foreigners to stay in certain areas. And they ended up, they got me when I was going across the Tibetan border. And they couldn't figure out how I got there. With no money, not able to speak the language, how could I possibly get that far? And but it ended up, I had someone tell me that I was too old. And they respect their old people. So I'd have to do something criminal to be thrown in jail. Now they might ask me to leave, but they're not going to throw me in jail. And so after that, I heard that. Well, then I went back. That's when I went back for 6 months. And now I know my limitations. so now I know my limitations. Man, I had fun, and I traveled all over China. And I say it was an experience, and it was much worse in the way of political than what I thought it was going to be. And I was in Cuba, and I thought that was bad. Well, this is even worse yet. And money is electronic. I mean, everything that I don't like what's happening here in the United States has already happened in China. And if because everybody rats on everybody. Kind of like here, if you see something, say something. Dial 911. Here in the United States, don't take personal responsibility. You're too stupid. Call somebody and let them make those decisions. So it's worse than that in China, and on everything, all aspects of life. But the good thing is you don't have to worry about nothing because they take care of you. And but like I say, they don't take care of you the way I want to be taken care of. But it was an experience, and but like I say, I'm not going back there. I am going back to Thailand. So
how did you handle the gun situation? Do they allow them or not?
Okay. They don't. There's no gun. You heard there's no guns in China? There's a saying, there's no guns in China. There's another saying, there's no crime in China. And there's another saying that you don't hear about is they lie in China. So it took me less than 30 days that I could find guns. So if I needed guns, I could get my hands on it. And there is crime. They don't report it. And, that's why you see Chinatown, the Chinese victimize Chinese, and that's because the Chinese aren't going to report it. And so that's something in their culture. And China is the same way. People couldn't believe that, I couldn't drive. I was too old to drive, so they wouldn't let me drive. I ended up having an electric motorcycle. And so I went all over with electric motorcycle, and I'd park it, and they wouldn't believe that, I don't lock it all up. And I'd tell them, well, there's no crime in China, and so everybody just laughs. Because I say, people know better. But I say it's really controlled, a real controlled. And I couldn't handle that 10 years ago, but I am getting old. So, it was nice being pampered, not having to worry about nothing. And, but, like I say, I still, it's not for me. Even as old as I am, I won't do it.
Mike, have you ever broken any laws?
Okay. I break laws all the time. But what I do is, I believe in morals. I mentioned, what separates the United States from any other country is our belief system, and that is morals. Morals is as long as I stick with my morals. When I break laws, just give me a ticket, I'll pay it. No big deal. And normally they just tell me you don't do it, and I don't do it. No big deal. But like I say, so it's the moral guidance that's really important. Good values, staying with your values, and putting your values and your morals to the test. And because not everybody's equal on the level of their morals. Yeah, and the United States is known as a moral country. That's why I tell people, this is because God is first. This is what illegal immigrants have a hard time understanding. That's why they'll never fit in. The legal immigrants, they go through the process, and one of the things they learn in the process is they need to stand by their morals, and they need to build strong morals. And when you do that, you can you can go through anything. And most people, if you're doing the morally correct thing, they just, it's no big deal. They just give you a warning, and I do that with military and police. Like I say, I break every kind of law there is. That's one reason why I leave the United States. They're not near so forgiving in the United States, and they want to hold things against me. And outside the United States, I'm the best acting person there is, and that's because I stick with my morals, because I don't understand the culture, I don't understand the laws. So I stick with my morals, and I expect that from other people. Even when I'm outside the United States, and people say you need to get along with that culture. Well, I love learning about it, but as individuals, even though it's a collective society, I want that person to show me their morals, because I say that's what makes the character of the person, is their strength in their morals, what kind of morals they have, and the strength that they have. And when that's the problem, or when that's the situation, it's easier to get things done. In China, everybody kept telling me, you can't do this, you can't do that. Why? None of this stuff that I wanted to do was immoral, but it was all illegal. And so that's why I'm saying you really need the moral guidance to control yourself. With that, you can go anywhere, you can do anything. Without that, you got to go by the laws. Kind of like in Cuba, they said, if you want to know what's right and wrong, just ask Castro. That's not a good way to do it. And China was, like I say, even worse. And I bribe in China, and there's no bribes, and I bribe in China.
Mike, when we come back, can we talk about those who think that we're going to be taken over by the Chinese? Maybe they're going to bring the military over here and run roughshod over us. What would that be like, and how would we respond? We'll be right back. No stress. Mike, many feel that the Chinese will come over, and Chinese military come over and help us with domestic strife. What would that be like, and what tactics would we need to deploy to protect ourselves from that?
Okay, I'm sorry, I can't answer that yet. First, you have to understand how it's going to work, and this is what I want to touch on. The thing is, for one thing, the United States has got a very short history. China's got a long history, and I kind of keep up with the China history. And what happens in China's history, throughout its history, it gets divided up. It gets strong, and then after it gets strong, it gets divided up. And so I say we don't have a history long enough to figure this out. But I believe what's going to happen is the United States will be divided up. Now, the reason it's going to be divided up will more than likely be financial. And China doesn't use, it's not a U.S. dollar base, and neither is Russia. And so everybody is going to want part of the United States. And that's the only way they'll be able to get it and keep it, is taking parts of it. You can't take the whole United States. So in other words, China is going to take a section of it. And like I say, I don't know if Russia will or Britain will or, I don't know. The UN, New World Order, I don't know all this kind of stuff. But they're not going to be able to take it on a whole. So what they're going to be doing is taking a slice, and they're going to protect that slice. That is theirs. And so it's not just the Chinese you're going to have to worry about. And none of them are like Americans. And we're right back to what we were talking about. We have some faith that's number one. Like I say, the government is number three. And you see it when there's disasters. Americans come together. That's we the people, individuals, come together. Now, that's what's going to happen. We're going to come together because we're not going to appreciate anybody trying to tell us how we're going to run our lives. Now, the thing is, the younger ones are learning socialism. So they will be more open to the idea of giving up their freedom. So what we're going to have to do is more education for the younger folk, and it's not education just on the difference between capitalism and communism, but it's taking personal responsibility, having faith, understanding that we are free people. We are our own people. And once you understand that, then you can take steps. And the three-man militia is going to be the way you're going to have to do it. And it will cover all aspects of all the different things that we're going to have to do. Make sense?
Absolutely. Mike, do we have time to talk about booby traps?
That's going to be one of those really cool things that that you will need. These are all booby traps aren't necessarily electronic. They're simple. I'll tell you, one of the really cool things that I did, I trained SWAT teams for a few years, and one of the things I did was I would put liquid soap on the floors. And, depending on the area that we're on, in some places we had hardwood floors. And you put liquid soap on the floor, they got good tactics. They've practiced their tactics. They know they're going to work. And then when they take a step, they start slipping and falling, and they can't even get through a door. So their tactics just went away. That is a booby trap. That is something that can't be seen, and it's going to completely affect the way they do things.
Mike, it's been delightful broadcasting with you for 2 hours. I look forward to broadcasting with you again before you go on your next adventure. Let me know if you're available next Friday for some time with us, and you can send me an email.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, Mike, it's my pleasure. It's so great to be with you. Mike Ma, No Stress Mike. You can find him all over YouTube, and he's a senior USA preparedness instructor. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.